Another day, another oh dear Lord help us, the coronavirus is getting substantially worse. We've got an outbreak now hitting Europe. South Korea is getting worse, and we've got border closings across the board. Can I just point out one thing before we get into the coronavirus news? You've got Israel threatening to shut its borders down. You've got Turkey, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Armenia closing its borders to Iran over the coronavirus. And at the same time that we're facing a global pandemic with a substantial mortality rate, you've actually got activists and politicians in this country saying no borders. Break up CBP. Okay, hold on. I think it's funny that when you live in prosperity for so long, you forget how serious the problems can be, and you forget why you created the security in the first place. No one's ever broken into my home. Why do I lock the door? Gotta admit, a lot of people become lax. They become soft, and then the bad things happen. So we got a bunch of news. I'm not going to get too much into the story from the Jerusalem Post about these border closings. I think that speaks for itself. What's more worrisome to me, the Daily Beast. Coronavirus explodes in Italy, threatening Europe. Can it be contained? The answer is no. Experts have already said as much. Trump is outraged. They brought back people on a plane. He didn't want it to happen. And now we're hearing that there are several infections, cell clusters, that we cannot trace. Stands to reason. Quarantine is already broken. This is a wasted effort. They should be focusing on other efforts because quarantine ain't working. I mean, perhaps it's slowing things down. But for the longest time, they said 14 days was the incubation period. Then we found out it could be as long as 24 days. Now there's one guy in one story, 27-day incubation. So sure, they held you up for 2 weeks. You get out, you infect a bunch of people. Now we can't trace any of it. I'm going to read this to you. It's happening in Europe. It will likely come to the United States. It's probably already here. Some experts have already testified that in the US, there could be thousands of cases and we just don't know. But I want to show you some world data. I don't know exactly what this website is, but the data seems to correlate pretty well with what I've seen from other news reports. So take it with a grain of salt, as I normally say. Worldometers.info, coronavirus. 78,933 cases so far. 2,470 deaths. 23,418 have recovered. Now, when calculating the mortality rate, there's some official CDC way of doing it, tracking like the national expected, like the population versus how many people they think will actually get sick and die. But that's not what people are actually asking for when they want to know what the mortality rate is. Look, I'll put it this way. Of the closed cases, the mortality rate of the coronavirus among closed cases is 10%. Check this out. 25,888 cases which had an outcome. 23,418 have recovered, 90%. 2,470 have died, 10%. And of the active cases, 22% are in serious or critical condition. Most people, around 78, 80%, will get mild symptoms, probably don't even know they have it. But of the people who have gotten the disease, these have resolved in 90% being fine, but 10% dying. That's the number most people are asking for when you're calculating the likelihood of dying if you contract the disease. As of right now, it would seem, with the cases resolving, 10% have died. I don't know how you want to calculate it, whatever. Maybe that's not accurate. That's just what the data is showing. But let's talk about Europe. I don't think it can be contained. Experts have already said they don't think it can be contained. And I'm going to stop right now, and I'm going to say something that I know may be annoying to many of you who watch all of my videos about updates on this. They kept telling us everything was fine. They kept telling us it was not going to be as bad as the flu. Why aren't you getting your flu shot, etc. They kept saying these things, but it did continually get worse. Look at the response from China with the massive quarantine. Look at the response from the militaries around the world. Border closings, quarantine. Take it very seriously. If you have not gone out and got supplies already, you are making a serious mistake. I'm not saying become a prepper and build a bomb shelter. 3 years of food. I'm saying just go out and get some cases of bottled water or something because you will not regret it. If all of this blows over, guess what? You drink the water anyway. Let's read the story from the Daily Beast. Rome. The word quarantine comes from the 17th. Okay, you're really going to do this to me, guys? I don't care where the word comes from. They say the word is being used again in Italy. Oh, you think? Applied to the government's draconian reaction as the coronavirus and the disease known as COVID-19 appear to be hitting the country with a vengeance. More than 50,000 Italians living in 10 communities are literally locked down facing jail sentences and fines if they leave their homes, thanks to the largest outbreak outside of Asia. The towns, all in the north of the country, are cut off from the rest of Italy now. Not even the trains stop when they roll through. The church services are canceled, and dipping one's hand in holy water is strictly prohibited. Three major Series A soccer games in the area have been postponed, and schools have all been closed for the foreseeable future. Anyone defying the restrictions faces 3 months in jail and a fine of around $250. But all across the country, paranoia is spreading faster than the virus. Giorgio Armani tweeted that he will now hold his fall 2020 show behind closed doors in Milan this week, live streaming the runway from an empty theater. The mayor of Milan, a city of more than 1.3 million people, announced Sunday that all schools and universities will be closed for at least a week, even though the city is not locked down under the current quarantine. In Rome, nervous taxi drivers outside Fiumicino Airport were hesitant to pick up Asian passengers, and a Chinese woman in Turin reported being assaulted for simply being Chinese. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte announced that all scholastic trips into and out of the country are being suspended, including one involving this reporter's son, who was pulled from a flight to Budapest along with 30 other students early Sunday morning. Whoa, this is getting bad. I feel bad for Europe. You know why? Because they're breaking down their borders. They're continually advocating for breaking down these borders, and we're seeing a rise of right-wing nationalism and populism, and this is going to bolster that substantially. Could you imagine what would have happened to the United States if activists like AOC or Bernie Sanders and other politicians broke up Customs and Border Protection, decriminalized border crossings, and then this pandemic broke out? Imagine if Bernie Sanders did win in 2016 and he carried out this agenda. And since then, hundreds of thousands of people, because it was like 1 million people who crossed the border, started pouring through. Unknown diseases, viruses, and the coronavirus outbreak. Now, I'm not saying illegal immigrants are dirty or anything. I'm saying there is a pandemic underway. It is becoming a global health crisis. Italy is locking down. This has just been getting worse. China, we don't even know what they're doing because they're lying. There was a report out of South China University, I believe, Beijing, where they believe this may have escaped a lab through a bat bite or something to that effect. That's their latest speculation. Out of China, they believe that's where it came from. Now, you still have the New York Times and the Washington Post trying to underplay what's really going on, claiming it's a conspiracy theory. No one's saying it's definitive. I mean, some people are probably saying it's definitive. But people in media of moderate prominence and politicians have kept a cool head when talking about this, saying this is a real possibility. Look at the science and the report that was just released. Not saying it's 100% true. I'm saying we need to consider this could be much more serious than we realize. That report said it's probable that someone was entangled in the evolution of the virus, whatever that means. It is a novel virus. We have no immunity. It is spreading rapidly. And more importantly, is the economic damage that's going to come from this. We got a great economy happening right here in the U.S., but the economy has been taking a hit. The markets have been taking a hit because of coronavirus fears. We get a ton of our antibiotics produced in China, our rare earths produced in China, our smartphones so much produced in China, and they are in full-on panic mode over this. It's only gotten worse. 70,000 plus cases. Of those that closed, 10% have died. The story says, Matteo Salvini, the leader of the far-right League Party, wants to close the frontier, though countries that border Italy are likely thinking the same thing from their side. An outbreak this extensive and virulent is likely to impact all of Western Europe very quickly, if not with the disease itself, then with precautions taken to try and stop it. Since Friday, Italian authorities have confirmed more than 130 new cases, including 2 fatalities in the north of the country. 3 people, including 2 Chinese tourists who were confirmed positive in Rome last month, have since recovered and are no longer believed to be contagious. A Chinese tourist died in France earlier this month, but the deaths in Italy are the first Europeans killed by the virus. Both of the Italian victims were in their 70s. The first was a man who died in a hospital and who also suffered from other respiratory problems. The second was a woman found dead in her home on Saturday morning, clearly unaware she even had the virus. It is unknown how many people may have been in contact with her. The quick spread of the disease in this outbreak and the uncertainty about how it came to Italy is especially troubling. In the northern town Codogno, near Milan, Cordogno, however you pronounce it, The 39 people who initially tested positive are all tied to the local hospital and so-called patient zero, who was thought to have brought it back from Shanghai. The problem is that patient zero never tested positive for the virus. Authorities think he may have been a silent carrier, infecting a friend referred to as patient one, whose only tie to China was being a friend of patient zero. Authorities at first thought patient zero had the virus and recovered, but they concede that in fact there may be another source. Clearly, this is not a perfect science. We've lost control of this. As if we ever had control in the first place. That's probably a better way to put it. We've never had control of this coronavirus. And now it's getting worse. And I'll be the first to admit, when this first came out, of course I said, remain calm, it's probably nothing, SARS, MERS. We are well beyond SARS at this point. We are well beyond avian flu and these other things. Now, I get it. Flu is bad. It does kill substantially more. But I want to point out, maybe they're overreacting. We know this is traveling as fast, but the reality is the mortality rate is substantially higher. How they calculate mortality rate, as I explained, it's like, I looked it up. It's kind of weird. I don't exactly know how to do it, but they look at like the entire population. If 25,000 people have gotten this and 10% have died, take that extremely seriously, because it looks like the governments are doing it. Now, we'll tell you, they're not going to want to get you panicked and riled up, because that would devastate the economy and actually inhibit the ability to create a vaccine of some sort or some kind of preventative measure. So they're going to tell you everything's fine. They always will. And you shouldn't panic for good reason, but you should prepare. Now, Vox just published this story just a little bit before I was actually recording at 11 a.m. Why the coronavirus outbreak increasingly looks like a pandemic. I got to say, I'm really kind of offended by a lot of these people who write for woke media, where they have zero curiosity and they're so dumb that literally everything the government says must be true. So when reports are coming out of China that say this may have originated in a biolab, they go, oh, no. The Chinese government said no. Of course, we believe the Communist Party, who's mass-produced 4 hospitals in 10 days through a massive construction project. They're just doing it because it's fun. There's no problem. They're just being safe. No, they're freaking out. They're absolutely freaking out. So we have experts they quote in the story that are basically saying it is too late. Let me read a little bit. The likelihood that we're hurtling into a pandemic, a new disease that spreads around the world, or that we're already in one, seems higher than just a week ago. It's going to get worse. I hope you are paying attention. Quote, our window of opportunity for containing the virus is narrowing, so we need to act quickly before it closes completely, said World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom on Friday. But other public health experts think the window has already closed. They say worrisome new developments in this outbreak suggest containing the virus, particularly in low resource settings, may no longer be possible, if it ever was. I don't think the answer is shutting down the world to stop this virus. It's already out, said Michael Osterholm, director of the University of Minnesota's Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy. When several countries have widespread transmission, then spill over to other countries is inevitable, said Anthony Fauci, head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. One cannot shut out the rest of the world. If halting the spread of the virus is increasingly out of reach, public health officials will have to accept that it's everywhere and move to a new phase of readying for pandemic. They are. The story came out on the 7th. The U.S. military is preparing for a full-blown pandemic. We're at a turning point in the COVID-19 epidemic, said Lawrence Gostin, a global health law professor at Georgetown University. We must prepare for the foreseeable possibility, even probability, that COVID-19 may soon become a pandemic affecting countries on virtually all continents. It's broken quarantine. You are not going to stop it. Now you get it. All right. They say numerous countries and one cruise ship have seen rapid spread of the coronavirus. Italy is freaking out. I assure you, if we know about it in Italy, that means we don't know where it's already spread to, but it very well has. As I mentioned earlier, this was like last week. Experts testified in the US there could already be thousands of cases, very likely. And we don't know. Some people might have a mild case and never even report it. Like they said, one woman in Italy died, didn't even know she had the virus, thought she was just sick. The mortality rate for this one is higher. Some people have actually died in hospitals, young people, a doctor, one of the first doctors who found out about it. But here's the question I have. Because at the same time this story is breaking, and I hope you are all taking it seriously. I'm not saying the world's ending. It may blow over. Just keep calm, but seriously take care of yourself and your family. I'll say it a million times. There's questions over what's going to happen to the election. Slate says White House fears effect of coronavirus on election as world braces for pandemic. Can you imagine the complete and utter bedlam if this becomes a global pandemic with a 60% infection rate, like some experts have said, and we have to postpone the election? Already in Iran, they're claiming voter turnout is low over coronavirus fears. Here's what worries me. That could be true. People don't want to go out into massive public settings. They will forego voting for their own safety. If there is record low voter turnout, Trump wins a massive landslide. That's Moody's analytics. Think about what happens when they decide we will hold an election amid this massive outbreak, assuming it extends into November. We'll see. It's going to get warmer. That could make things worse. Let's say they decide to hold the election. Voter turnout is record lows because nobody wants to risk getting the infection. Trump wins in a massive landslide. That's going to leave the left, the Bernie supporters, more Democratic personalities furious. So it may actually come from Democrats. It may actually come from the left that we should postpone the election because of coronavirus fears. We've already seen one story. Iran is claiming the voter turnout is down over the coronavirus. I find it questionable, but maybe it makes sense. I mean, would you, if you knew there was an outbreak and they're shutting the borders down around your country, are you going to go out into public or are you going to bunker down and try and wait for this to blow over? A lot of people are going to say, I'm not going to vote. So then what happens if Trump gets record low voter turnout? He wins. I think it's possible if this does extend. I'm saying it's a big if. We don't know where we're going to go from here. If this extends into November and gets substantially worse, I think the left is going to say no election. What does that mean for Donald Trump? I don't know. But it could mean an extended term. I don't know how we hold another election, we hold the election a month, 2 months later. What if they say we have to postpone the election because voter turnout will be abysmal and it's unfair? Everyone agrees. But everyone agrees that Trump's term, shouldn't extend beyond a certain point. So then what do you do? If, theoretically, the election happens in November, the transition is supposed to be around January with the inauguration of a new president should Trump lose. If we can't have an election due to severity of the coronavirus, and it extends even a month past January without an election, then Trump may be getting free time. But then what happens if it is the left saying we must shut down the elections and the coronavirus just continues to get worse? Dare I say, this could get bad. But there are other possibilities. And I know this is all speculation. We don't know what's going to happen, so remain calm. But another possibility is the need for government health care. This could be the thing that finally sets us over the top and creates a crisis that forces a Medicare for all scenario. I could be wrong about this. My understanding is that a lot of national health service in Europe they were created following World War II because of the massive devastation. They had no choice but to say, we've got to help people. Let's say that there is a massive 60% infection rate. 10% of the people who get this end up dying. We are going to see hundreds of millions, of people die if that's the case. Right now, there have been some extreme projections from experts testifying in the US and the UK of a potential 60% infection rate. The current mortality rate is between 1% and 2%. That means 40 to 90 million dead by the official government estimates right now in the absolute worst case scenario that's been proposed. It may not get anywhere near 60%, but a 2% mortality rate is like 10 to 20 times worse than the flu. It could be that things get so bad that in the government, you have a massive surge of the Bernie Sanders supporters saying the government must intervene on healthcare now. And the massive devastation from the economy, people aren't going to be worried about anything else. In which case, maybe Bernie Sanders takes it. Maybe they say the election must happen, but Bernie voters come out in droves demanding the government intervene because of the coronavirus. I can't tell you what's going to happen. I can only speculate. What I can tell you is every step of the way, this has gotten worse and worse and worse. We are now seeing mass quarantines in Italy. How much longer until it's in the rest of Europe? It's already starting to happen in the US. I think it's coming. I think it's going to get bad. I do not believe we're anywhere near the apocalypse, but do not have an optimism bias. We have had such good times for so long. People have gotten soft. Well, the hard time is here, and it may get really bad. We'll see what happens. I hope you are seriously getting at least some extra water and food. And don't let anyone shame you into not going to the store and picking up some vitamins, some water, some food. Because in the absolute best case scenario that I'm completely wrong and this all blows over, guess what? You just eat the food and drink the water and you move on with your life. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. YouTube.com/Timcast. It is a different channel, and I will see you all there.